Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our rant series. That's right. We haven't done one of these in a while, but usually we do a rant when an opportunity arises, something that kind of rankles us just a little bit. Rankles, is that even a word, Martin? I don't even know. But this particular rant, good morning, my friend. How are you?
Good. I always wonder if rankle spelt with a W-R or just an R, and I always have to look it up.
So. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. But anyway, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and it's been all over the internet over the last 24 hours, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announced their inductees list for this year, for 2022. And one of the bands that, for those of us who even care remotely about this sort of thing, have been wanting to see get inducted is Judas Priest, right? So they announced the list of all the inductees, and lo and behold, Judas Priest is on there, sort of, but not on the performance list. They are instead on this thing called the Musical Excellence Award. So, and I'm going to read to you exactly what the quote was. The metal icons will receive the Musical Excellence Award at this year's event held November 5th, 2022 at Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles. According to the official Hall of Fame website, the award is given to artists, musicians, songwriters, and producers whose originality and influence creating music have had a dramatic impact on music. So wait a second. The last I knew, every artist or band who gets inducted into the Hall of Fame is inducted for roughly criteria that includes everything that just said. So what is the difference between Carly Simon and Pat Benatar and all these other R&B artists and pop artists, and Eminem and the Eurythmics, and who I forget even who else was on the list for this year? What is different? What's the difference? So in other words, so all those main acts were not influential, were not original, and only Priest was? I don't get it. I don't understand.
Well, okay, so a little history here. So I looked up who won this award in the past. So this started in the year 2000, and it originally was designed for, it's a very simple concept. It was essentially for sidemen, for people who were in bands or influential in music, but haven't got in on a main band. And it seemed a little bit almost like an award for people that just, unfortunately for them, they are a big part of like a solo act, and the solo act hasn't gone in yet. So I've got a list. We can make this a little bit about Priest, should they get in or not, but I wanted to start like a little bit more of an elevated idea of like, let's look at this category. And this is what drives me crazy more than anything about this. So well, let's start with that. So essentially, well, no, I'll read a little bit. So Chet Atkins, Benny Benjamin, Billy Preston, Bill Black, Hal Blaine, James Burton, Floyd Kramer, King Curtis, Steve Douglas, Tom Dowd, the E Street Band, DJ Fontana, James Jamerson, Glyn Johns, Johnny Johnson, LL Cool J, Cosimo Matassa, Scotty Moore, Spooner Oldham, Earl Palmer, Randy Rhoads, Nile Rodgers, Leon Russell, Ringo Starr, and Little Walter. This year, it's Judas Priest and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. So when I look at that big list, I think of like James Jamerson, DJ Fontana, E Street Band. That is, as per this idea of like important people. We can argue about Bruce Springsteen should have just gone in, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, maybe, right? Right. But LL Cool J, big, huge solo artist. Why are you here as a sideman? But so that's the start of the cracks in the wall. That's the start of the category definition going brain dead, like all those Grammy categories, which is why I hate the Grammys even more so than the fact that it's all pop. Just the idea of performance of the year, record of the year, what's a record versus a single versus an album, performance by a duo, when all of pop is a huge boardroom of people, and who knows who does what, and then it's different people in every song anyways. There's no groups or anything anymore, right? It doesn't matter, but they go into all these stupid brain dead categories which eventually mean nothing. This now means nothing because you've got LL Cool J, which was the first kind of, crack in the armor of this having any sort of semblance of sensibility, right? Randy Rhoads said, see, this was interesting. I was reading yesterday when all the Facebook comments were coming in. Randy Rhoads goes in as kind of like a really clean idea of this, because I was reading people were getting mixed up and saying, oh, Ozzy went in as a solo artist the same time as Randy Rhoads. Not true. It's just Randy Rhoads going in. Ozzy is not in as a solo artist, right? So, so that kind of makes sense. But even when you think Randy Rhoads, you think, okay, well, that opens the door. If all of us, classic rock, hard rock people sat down and looked at all the people who could maybe go in, there could be many, many names, but that's a good one, right? It could be Randy, it could be Zach, it could be other people in solo art, but that seems true to the thing. And then you get Ringo Starr. Like Ringo Starr, you're in already as the Beatles, right? Yeah. Maybe some of these other people are in for other reasons. I don't know. I don't think so. But so that one's a little bit weird. And then Judas Priest just breaks the whole thing wide open, because as I typed away in my rants on Facebook, it's like, there's a drummer at the back, there's a singer at the front, there's a bunch of guys in between. It's a band. It has nothing to do with
50 years worth of albums.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, I've got that Goldmine article that I wrote 5 years ago that outlined all the reasons Priest should go in. But I just, that's what annoys me more than anything, is just the breaking of this category, them just saying, well, I guess from now on we can just throw anybody in here we want. What I always sort of thought the hall worked like, and I was fine with it, is that, well, this fan vote thing came later, but what I sort of envision it and like about like maybe the voting process being is that there's the fan vote, and that counts for something, but we don't need to know what it is. And then there's all the people who are part of the hall that vote as well, and keep a little mystery between how much the fan vote counts and how much it doesn't count. And then it comes out and everybody's in. There's one version of getting in. You're just in as a performer. And then this other stuff, it's kind of cool. Like, this whole idea with the whole, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis thing, right? So this is like big producers of pop records, right? It's like maybe have a whole, take in 2 producers every single year or something, or have these other categories. And I like this idea of the sidemen thing, and maybe come up with some other things, but don't mix them up and get everything confused and start having this as a grab bag category. That's what annoys me the most about this whole thing. And I'm sensible about the bands I want to go in. Like this year, New York Dolls didn't get in, MC5 didn't get in, Devo didn't get in. I love all those bands. I'm fine with them not getting in. I think that's sensible. Some of my favorite bands of all time, people are always, oh, Thin Lizzy, Blue Oyster Cult should get in and stuff. I'm like, maybe eventually, but right now, you weigh everything together and they're okay, but maybe a few years from now, but I'm fine if they're not getting in now. It seems to be okay, but Priest is one that I've argued up and down for like a dozen reasons why they should get in. But again, that's not the point. The point is just screwing up this category and putting them in with an asterisk. Like I said in the thing, they're not going through the grown-up door. They're going in through the doggy door. They're sitting at the kids' table, all that kind of stuff. And again, I don't even care about too much about being inducted by a famous person, getting to play, having guests up, all that kind of stuff. But there just should be one way of getting in as a performer. There's my rant. So I don't know. I mean, what do you got to add to that?
Absolutely agree with you. To me, this just screams like, all right, here's this heavy metal band. We as the hall don't really like heavy metal. We don't really think it's all that important, but obviously the fans are constantly screaming for them. So you know what? We'll put them in a couple of years in a row in the fan vote. We'll see how it goes. Oh, they perform pretty well every year, but we still don't like heavy metal. Well, now it's like the third time. I think it's the third time they've been on the ballot. They perform pretty well in the fan vote. God, do we want to keep doing this? You know what? Let's just shut everybody up. And you know what? We'll put them in on this other category that we created. They don't kind of fit, but who cares? And we'll be done with it. That's what this screams of.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it's a slap in the face to Priest because I hadn't looked at the list prior to you reading it off before of all those kind of sidemen and whatnot. Yeah. And 80% of those perfectly make sense, probably even more than that, because it's exactly what the award was intended for. It's for guys or women who played on lots of albums, maybe had a solo career, maybe not, but they were so important, how many like really important like studio musicians have played on a million fucking albums over the years, right? And never get the recognition they deserve. That's what that award is for. Yeah. Judas Priest is a live band who has been recording and touring and selling out arenas, platinum selling albums, hugely influential on so much of the heavy metal bands that came after them. They're not sidemen. They're not part of this category. It's literally just like, okay, let's just give them this so it goes away. This is just the whole wanting to take the broom and lifting up the carpet and shoving all the dirt underneath so they don't have to think about it anymore. So and with that being said, is this going to happen every year now? Or in 3, 4, 5 years, are we going to get them doing the same thing to Iron Maiden? They're going to do it to Motorhead. They're going to do it to Thin Lizzy. They're going to do it to whatever other band comes up that everybody, the fans are screaming for. I don't know. And the LL Cool J thing is really weird too, because that, I think, to me, he's another guy who's been on the ballot year after year after year that I know performs well based on the fan votes and never gets in. My personal opinions of LL Cool J is, irrelevant, but he doesn't belong in this category either. Yeah. It just screams to me like a really lazy excuse just not to deal with the bands that people really want to put in.
Yeah, and I did a little research on Kraftwerk this morning, and people were saying that Kraftwerk was a similar situation where they were kind of on the ballot a bunch of times, but then they just got put in. And I'm looking all over, and it looks like Kraftwerk went in clean, like the usual way. So I don't see what the problem is of just putting more people in. I mean, I look at the list this year. It's Eminem, Lionel Richie, Carly Simon, Eurythmics, Duran Duran, Pat Benatar. I think that's the whole list. Dolly Parton, I think, is now part of it as well. And then who didn't get in? Tribe Called Quest, Rage Against the Machine, Dionne Warwick, let's see, Carly Simon, did get in. Beck, Kate Bush, another one. I would have loved to seen Kate Bush get in, but I totally don't really believe it. Not truly highly necessary yet. Devo, Fela Kuti, MC5, New York Dolls. So I guess it is a long list, and maybe you have to have a set number or something, or they try to keep it at a set number. But I just think a funny thing happened here in Toronto. So we have this big, huge, vastly growing, like full on, really highly respected university in town called Ryerson, right? My son went there. He just graduated there in journalism. And that's one of the things it's known for, but other things as well. So it was led by a guy called Egerton Ryerson, who had to do with the setting up of the residential school system, where there's a lot of fuss up here in Canada about it was really, really bad for Indigenous kids and breaking up families and stuff. So it's one of these things where like a Cleveland Indians thing and all that, where they basically said, we got to change the name of this place because it's not appropriate anymore. Fine. Okay. So they changed the name. They go, we had 2,600 names we considered. You know what they came up with? Toronto Metropolitan University. I mean, that sounds like a place you go like to pay your fine because you put your hot water tank out for the garbage men and they don't take hot water tanks, or you go, that's where you like renew your license plates or something, right? It's we also have a very famous church in Toronto called Metropolitan, like Metropolitan United, and like it sounds like a subway stop, right? It's just not inspiring at all, right? And you think it just destroys your faith in committees, right? Yeah. 2,600 names. I mean, on a list of 5 names, that would probably be at the bottom that I would pick. Right.
It's the best you can come up with. Yeah.
Toronto Metropolitan University. And, they're trying to, on the news, they're trying to say, oh, I guess they'll call it TMU or Toronto or something. It's like, well, okay, Toronto University is even better, right? We don't have one, so call it Toronto University. Like, just take out the Metropolitan. Like, it's ridiculous, right? So that's the thing that always bothered me about the Grammys, and that's what kind of bothers me about this. It's like, is it like too much committee? Maybe it's not even enough committee. Maybe it's like just one stupid person, wrecking the category, whatever, right?
Yeah, it's even funny too. It's like I over the last bunch of years, every year when excuse me, when they list the nominees, right, and then they list the inductees, I usually do a rant video for both, and I just do it just because so many people ask, and like, they want to hear me talk about this, and every year that goes by, I think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is more and more ridiculous. And I said after the last time, which I don't even remember if it was last year or the year before, I'm like, you know what, I'm not doing these anymore because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is so irrelevant. I'm like, and I'm happy to be done with it. And then they royally screw it up even more this year, and it's like, how can you not talk about this? Because it's so ludicrous. It really is. And it's funny because I was reading some quotes from the guys at Priest, and they're so happy to be recognized and all this kind of stuff. And then I saw your post on Facebook where you're like, they should just flat out say no. We don't want to accept this. They should totally turn this down. I'm like, I mean, God bless her. Dolly Parton, months ago was just like, I don't want to be considered for this because I'm not really rock and roll. And there's like so many other better people, and better bands.
But now she's muddied her message, right?
And now she hasn't. But you think about it, I'm like, all right, Dolly's fine, right? But come on. It's like, how can you, it's not rock and roll. It's like, it's the lines are so blurred beyond recognition. This should no longer be called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It should just be called the Music Hall of Fame, because that's really what it is. It's like, they have their own country hall of fame, right? All these musical genres have their own halls of fame, right? Why can't we just have this one just be what it is? It's just like,
but you bring up a point, I actually like the Hall of Fame. I think it's okay. And what I like about it is there are so many of these things that have not gained any traction, but people do get up in arms about this. So I like the way that it's gotten traction, right? People actually do care, a lot of people. And then you get a lot of people that don't care. I swear, I mean, half the reason I wanted to complain all about this is just to watch Monty Connor go crazy, because he's my famous buddy who just says, I don't care at all about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or whatever, right? But
why are you guys wasting your time talking about this?
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. But what I said there is that I think Priest should turn it down, but respectfully and cheerfully, and not with any anger whatsoever, and say, if you don't mind, guys, we really respect the institution. We respect it so much that we would love to go in one day clean, and just say, can you just put us on the sideline? And maybe we'll see what happens next year or the year after that. But because we would love to be part of it. But we'd love to be part of it, the proper way. We do respect it. It obviously has traction. It matters to us. It matters to us so much that it pains us to have to turn this down, but we'd like to turn this down, and we're doing it respectfully. But can you just put us on the sideline to see what happens in subsequent years? That's what I would love to see them do.
But I agree with you, but what would entail we'll see what happens actually happen? Because if they couldn't just do it this year and they went this route, what makes you think the Hall is going to change their mind and get them in clean next year or the year after what, 100 million votes through the fan voting? Obviously they don't really care about that, right? And it doesn't really mean much. So I don't know. I agree with you, but I don't, to me, I would think the Hall is probably like, well, they don't want it, okay, screw them, that's it, they're done.
Yeah.
So
but we also got, we have to acknowledge as well that they didn't do that great in the fan vote thing. They were like 5th or 6th or something, right? So we always have to remember and keep a clear head and acknowledge that the world doesn't revolve around classic rock, right? Yeah. So it's fine. I mean, it's interesting that happens, but I was always under the impression, I remember when Rush went in, I was always under the impression that it was this kind of cool, mysterious mix of, well, we got this fan vote thing in over here, but we're also an academy over here, and we'll all work it out in the thing, and then we're going to tell you who won. But it's not exactly the fan thing. But again, it should just be one way. You just get in or you don't get in, and then you're on the sideline for next time. So
yeah, and and how. To the MC5s and the New York Dolls and the Devos and the Judas Priests of the world and every Thin Lizzy, whatever, how many how many years do you continue to be on a ballot when at some point you're just like, all right, you know, this just isn't happening, right? To me, it also doesn't look good on a band that's on the ballot year after year after year after year after year, and they don't get in. It's like,
I somewhat disagree with that, because there are only so many bands that get in every year, and there's only so many years in the world, right? So it's like there are lots and lots and lots of bands all the time. So it's a little bit like, you know, for an album to show up in your top 20 when there's 300,000 albums out there, that are whatever, classic rock or hard rock, like even within a genre, there's a lot. So it means a lot. So it does mean a lot that you are talked about a few times in a row. So it's almost like as time goes on and there's so many bands out there, you know, that in itself is a badge of honor, to even be literally sitting there on that fan thing out of 8 or 9 bands that are being asked upon to be voted upon, is kind of cool. So yeah, the fact of the matter is, you know, they had to do it a certain way right from the start with like, okay, here's our whatever it is, 10 or a dozen or 8. I don't even know. Is it a fixed number? But it's only so many a year. And then it's 12 months later. We got to do another 8 or 10. And it's 12 months later again. So, you know, I've never disliked this idea of, you know, we've been on a few times and then we eventually got on. I think pretty much it's almost like a badge of honor that everybody probably should be debated a few times before they get on as time goes on, except for the Beatles, of course.
Yeah. I don't know. And the whole thing is just kind of screwy. I think that what really bothers me, and not to go off on a tangent, because I think we've kind of covered enough of this, but what really bothers me is when you have these bands that many of us who are of a certain age, right, have had decades of musical excellence, right, and influence and sales and all this stuff that they use as criteria, and then a band or artist who has been around for a fraction of that time gets in before those other ones. That drives me nuts. You know, to me, it's almost like, you know, respect your elders and let the ones in who have the long history first. Yeah. Because their time will come, right? The young guns, their time will come. So when I see, you know, artists who's only been around for 15, 20 years getting in over someone who's been creating music for 50 and doing it for a long time, to me, it's like, you got to wait. All right. Get to the back of the line. You'll get in eventually, just like you hope all of the ones we really want in get in eventually. Right. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So there you have it, everybody. Our little unplanned rant on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and specifically the Judas Priest induction into the musical excellence category, whatever. So let us know what you think down in the comments below. Yeah, we just, you know, this is like everybody's talking about it, so we figured we just kind of give our thoughts here. So that's what this is all about. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. Check us out on Facebook, but more importantly, we're here all together all the damn time on YouTube. For Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you real soon.